Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be the recap from Wednesday's online campaign that I just started running. We've met for 4 weeks straight trying to hash out some of the technology issues or the programs that I'm not familiar with. And most of them have gamed with me in person in the past. So we had them create 4 characters each, and they get to pick between 2 characters every game session that they're going to run with. If they wanted to switch out characters, they can at the beginning of the next game session, or between the game sessions. They can figure out which one they want. That said, each character only gets XP for the game session they're in, so some characters are going to start leveling, then you need to kind of rotate in the others to get them caught up on experience. But having 4 characters will also take away the sting from whenever you lose a character in combat, which is very common at the low levels, especially the way I run my games. I want the combats to be memorable and epic, and all these players understand that. That said, the very first combat really put a hurting on these guys. They are exploring the Shadow Tomb of Ashir. Ashir is the chief advisor to a pharaoh from 5,000 years ago. He had made 13 tombs, and 3 of which have been found. This is one of the ones that have been found, so the party knows of this from the rumors and myths and the fact that it is a travel location to some caravans that pass through the desert. After the rainy season, there is an oasis next to this ruin that lasts about 2 months. So there is water here, and another reason why the caravans stop here. This tomb is like a freestanding tomb inside a giant rock. The entrance is set up to be used by traders as a campground, because the first entrance doesn't have a door to it. It's a big chamber, and then there's a door that leads to the next chamber with a plaque written in Egyptian. This is an Egyptian themed campaign. So they're in the Egypt territory of the world, and and in the Egyptian hieroglyphics it says, "Do not enter, death is here." The door itself required a trick to open. I approached the players because they wanted to just use their skill to get through it, and said, yes, the skill would work, but I'd rather you all try to figure out how you would try to open this without using a skill roll. And they did. They tried pushing on it, they tried pulling on it. They ended up pulling it sideways into the wall like a hidden door, one of those compact hidden doors. But before I dive deeper into what all they got into, let's introduce the characters that were in the first game session. There was a goblin gunslinger named Boom. He wields an arquebus, so he has the cone effect, and it has been very entertaining to watch Boom. There's a half-elf occultist, Eurus. It's been very interesting to see a psionic occultist in the group. I don't remember the occultists doing a whole lot, but then again, they're entering a tomb with undead. There is a human necromancer named Dref. He was very useful, but very hampered by the first combat. There was a drow rogue named Alistan. There was an elf druid named Dawn. There was a rogue changeling named Ashna. There was a ratfolk bard / archaeologist named Alphas. There was a human brawler named Geru. And these were the players. These were the characters the players had picked. There was one player that didn't make that session. Hopefully he'll be able to make the session after this. It won't be this week coming up, it'll be the week after. So those were the characters and the classes. As they're messing with the door, a surprise round starts when a giant snake enters and attacks the necromancer, Dref. The giant snake hits him right away and poisons him. And this is the start to Dref having a very hard time in this dungeon. Because the poison this snake did was con damage. It would do a D3 con damage. You needed for 5 or 6 turns, I think it was 6 turns. For 6 rounds, you had to make a save, fort save. And the DC wasn't terribly high, but it was high enough to be annoying that as a level 1 character, you can't make it easily. And so he started losing hit points because I said for every 2 con you lose, and it was doing a D3 con damage, you lose a hit point per level. So his hit points dropped quickly. He ended up getting some healing during the combat, but his con score never changed. The next to suffer some unfortunate from the snake was the druid. Dawn started same thing, taking a bunch of con damage and losing a bunch of hit points. The party in 1 round did a handful of hit points damage to this thing, which might have totaled maybe a 1/5 of its hit points. And then Boom Boom asks if he can stick the arquebus into the mouth and pull the trigger. And I said, okay, well, its AC, everyone knew what its AC was because I said that originally. I say for that specific attack, the AC is going to be 20. If you hit it, you'll do automatic critical damage. And he did. And I don't even think I said automatic critical damage. I said you pretty much kill the thing. But he critted on it and did the critical damage, and it totaled 20 points. So he did 20 points to its head from the inside of the mouth with the weapon. And I believe that put it, the 20 points itself was almost half its hit points. So he killed it outright pretty quick. The party then tries to mitigate the poison damage for the remainder rounds that were just going by. And I kept them in the combat rounds until the poison was handled. And then after that, they went back to normal exploration. We just went through the names of everyone and said, okay, it's your turn, what are you doing? It's your turn, what are you doing? And then on the exploration stuff, they just go, okay, I'm in the lead, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So the first room that this door opens into from the main chamber was a small room that had an altar with a statue of a god. I think it was the god Osiris. And under the altar was a trap, and they figured it was a pressurized salt trap that had already been triggered. And so that there was no danger that they could tell, the thieves could tell, about moving and opening this little hidden chamber. So they do so. Inside they find a bunch of daggers, a bunch of silver jewelry. What else was there? Oh, and 3 gems that had been polished, cut and polished to be put into jewelry, but had not been set into jewelry. They checked the daggers and the jewelry for anything magical, and one of the daggers came up magical. So I don't remember which character specifically took it, but one of the players now has a magical dagger. There was a eerie light that illuminated the altar and the doorway when they entered this room. So that drew them to the altar, and then they also looked at the doorway to the next room. This was a large room with, this next room was a large room with support columns. There was hieroglyphs depicting a story of travel to the shadow, is how it's worded. And it also says that death seeks those as a jackal in the night. And as they were reading that, some mummies, some about 2.5 foot tall mummies with jackal heads, emerged out of the sand and attacked the party. And this was a challenging fight. These were, I used them as minions, but I gave them the base mummy DR of 5. So they had 1 hit point, but they had a DR of 5 unless you hit them with magic, fire, or holy damage. So for that, they had their hands full. And this combat ended up lasting probably about an hour and a half. The party won, but they suffered some damage from this. And after that, given how late the game was, we had called it, so the party had to figure out what they wanted to do after that combat, and they decided the necromancer had one of those creatures under its control. It's the only creature that survived the combat, so he could only retain control for 24 hours. So he was going to leave the creature in this room, and then they were going to go back out and close the doors to the main chambers, so that way the creature can't escape and no one else could just come in, wander in and start poking around on stuff unless they open the doors themselves. And most of the commoners that they understand, most of the traders, won't be poking themselves past that. Death is in their sign. So at this point, they traveled back to town. I'm going to have time pass in town equal to how many weeks pass before we play again. They can roll their crafts, professions, and stuff like that, and do a few things that's in the background, as well as heal, because those that are severely injured should be fully healed easily by the time we play again. And then we will take up the game. If they want to switch out any characters, they can. If another player can make it, or if a player can't make it, the character amount will change, and then they'll have more of this tomb to explore. I hope I entertained everybody with this, and I hope it's a good update for my players playing in it. Until we meet again.